My wife and her best friend stole over $500, $0 from our joint account and are now suing me for half of it. After I discovered the betrayal, they falsely accused me of embezzlement to cover their tracks. I never thought I'd be the guy to get like this, but here I am. It all started with a gut feeling that something was off, little things at first. My wife, Lisa, had always been a bit high maintenance, but lately she'd been acting more distant, more secretive. She'd leave her phone around, but then she'd get defensive if I asked to see it. She'd brush off my questions with that fake smile, saying I was paranoid or insecure. I didn't want to admit it, but I was starting to suspect she was hiding something. Then came the money. We built a decent life together, me working in finance, her managing a boutique. But I noticed our joint bank account balance was fluctuating wildly, and she always had some excuse. "It's just a big purchase I'm making for the house," she'd say, or "I needed to buy some gifts." I didn't think much of it at first, but I kept an eye on the account. One day I decided to check the online banking app after she left her phone unattended. What I saw made my stomach drop. Over $500,000 had vanished from our account. $500,000, I couldn't believe it. I stared at the screen, blinking hard, trying to make sense of it. There had to be some mistake. But no, every transfer, every withdrawal was there. I scrolled through the transaction history and found something chilling. Most of the money had been transferred to a separate account under her name, and a lot of it went to some offshore accounts. I felt sick. My mind raced, trying to piece everything together. How could she do this? Why? I had trusted her with everything, our savings, our future. We'd been married for 6 years, and I thought we were solid. It was like a punch to the gut. But the worst part was not knowing what she was doing with all that money. I couldn't shake the feeling that this was bigger than just some financial mishap. It was betrayal, deep, personal, and complete. I decided I couldn't ignore it anymore. I needed answers. That night, I waited until she came home from her girls' night, and I confronted her. I kept my voice steady, but inside I was boiling. I told her I knew about the money, about the transfer, and I asked her outright what was going on. Her face froze for a second, then she started to lie. She told me the money was for a new business idea that she'd been planning to tell me but didn't know how. She said she needed the money for something important, but refused to go into details. Her excuses sounded flimsy, and I could tell she was lying. When I pressed her further, she snapped at me, accused me of being paranoid, and called me controlling. She said I was just jealous because she was trying to do something for us, and that I shouldn't ruin her plans over some stupid suspicion. But I wasn't buying it. I saw the way she avoided eye contact, the way her hands trembled when she lied. Something was seriously wrong. That moment hit me hard. I was angry, betrayed, and confused all at once. My mind kept racing. How could she do this? How could she steal from us, from our future? I had always been the one working hard, saving for the kids' college, for our retirement. And now she was out there, secretly taking money and lying to my face. It made me feel like I didn't even know her anymore. I sat there, stunned, as she kept spinning her stories. I realized I couldn't trust anything she said anymore. My world was crashing down around me. And the worst part, I had no idea how deep this betrayal went or what she was planning next. I just knew I had to figure out what to do fast. After that night, everything changed. I couldn't sleep, I couldn't eat. My mind kept circling back to her lies, the stolen money, and the way she looked at me like I was the crazy one. I started digging into the bank statements more thoroughly, trying to connect dots I might have missed. That's when I found the offshore accounts. They weren't just random transfers, they were structured, deliberate. Someone, probably her, had set up these accounts to hide the money. It was obvious she wasn't just planning some small side hustle. This was serious, organized, calculated theft on a scale I never imagined she was capable of. I needed proof. So I hired a private investigator. I didn't tell Lisa. I just wanted to catch her in the act or find something concrete. I knew I had to be careful. If she was capable of lying so convincingly, I couldn't trust her to come clean on her own. The PI tracked her movements, monitored her calls, and uncovered that she'd been meeting with a man named Jake, someone she claimed was just a friend. Well, that was a lie, too. The PI caught her at a fancy restaurant with him, close enough that I could see them through the window. They weren't just friends. They'd been sleeping together. When I saw that, my stomach dropped. It wasn't just the money, it was the betrayal of my wife's fidelity. I'd always thought she was a little high maintenance, but I never suspected she'd cheat on me, let alone with some guy she met through her friend's advice on how to spice things up. The worst part, she lied about everything, about her business idea, about her meetings, about her feelings. She'd been sneaking around for months, and I was just catching up now. I couldn't believe I'd been blind. All those late nights she'd claimed were work meetings or girls' nights they were with Jake, and she was still lying about what they did. I felt like a fool. How long had she been hiding this? How much of our life was a lie? The anger boiled over, and I knew I couldn't stay silent anymore. I had to confront her again, but this time with everything laid bare. The next day I brought her home and told her I knew about Jake. Her face paled, but she still tried to lie her way out of it. "It's not what you think," she said, blinking rapidly. "He's just a friend, someone I met through my friend's cousin. It's nothing serious." I laughed bitterly. "You expect me to believe that after the photos, after the bank transfers, after the fact that you've been sneaking around behind my back for months?" Her excuses dissolved under my glare. She started crying, blaming me for not trusting her, calling me paranoid, saying I was overreacting. But I knew better. I knew she'd been lying for a long time, and this was just the tip of the iceberg. What hit me hardest was realizing how much she'd betrayed me financially and emotionally. She stolen over $500, $0 from our joint account, and now she was out there, sleeping with another man, pretending everything was fine. I felt like my world was collapsing. I'd worked so hard to build a life with her, and now I was faced with the fact that she'd been tearing it apart from the inside. I wanted to scream, to cry, to do something, but all I could do was sit there and process what I'd uncovered. I knew I had to act, but I wasn't sure what the right move was yet. The betrayal cut so deep, I wondered if I could ever repair this, or if I'd just been fooling myself all along. The money was one thing, but the lies, the cheating, this was a level of betrayal I never thought possible from someone I loved. I felt like I was drowning, but I also knew I had to be strong. I had to figure out how to get through this mess, how to protect what remained of my sanity, and how to decide what was next. Over the next few days, I was a mess. Every time I saw her, I felt this mixture of anger, sadness, and disbelief. It was like I'd been hit by a truck. I kept replaying everything, her lies, the money transfers, the secret meetings with Jake. I couldn't sleep. I couldn't focus. All I could do was think about how badly I'd been betrayed. I kept asking myself, how did I miss this? How did I not see it coming? I realized I needed to get a grip and start planning my next move. I couldn't just confront her again and hope she'd tell the truth. No, I needed to be strategic. I started gathering evidence, screenshots of bank statements, copies of texts between her and Jake, photos from the pie. I wanted to cover all my bases, just in case things went south. I also reached out to a lawyer to understand what my options were legally. I knew she'd stolen a huge chunk of money, and I didn't want her to get away with it. The lawyer told me I could file for divorce, especially given the financial betrayal and her infidelity. But I hesitated. I still loved her, or at least I thought I did. Maybe I was just in shock. But deep down, I knew this wasn't something I could fix with apologies or promises. The trust was shattered beyond repair. Still, I wanted her to face consequences, not just emotionally, but financially. I wasn't going to let her get away with stealing from us and cheating on me without repercussions. Meanwhile, Lisa kept up her lies. She'd cry and beg, saying she was sorry, that she loved me, that she'd change. But I saw through her. She was a master at manipulation, and I knew she'd spin her story to make me the bad guy if she could. She kept insisting it was just a mistake, that she'd been stressed, that she only did it because she thought I didn't love her anymore. Yeah, right. That's why she was out screwing around and stealing money. I wasn't buying it. She was trying to turn everything around on me, make me doubt myself. One day, she found out I'd hired the pie and she went ballistic. She accused me of spying on her, of invading her privacy. She said I was crazy for going that far, that I should trust her. That was the moment I realized she was good at gaslighting. She was twisting everything to make me doubt my own judgment, but I had enough. I told her I wasn't going to be played anymore. I showed her the evidence I'd collected and told her I was considering all options, including divorce and legal action. That conversation ended with her storming out of the house, screaming that I was ruining everything, that I was a terrible husband. Honestly, I didn't care. I was too numb to feel much of anything anymore. The emotional pain was overwhelming, feeling betrayed by the person I loved most in the world, and then watching her lie and manipulate her way through it. I was angry at myself for trusting her, angry at her for doing this, and angry at the situation for spiraling out of control so fast. I decided I couldn't keep living like this. I needed to get out of the house, clear my head, and figure out my next steps. I packed a bag, took some of the evidence I'd collected, and booked a hotel for a few days. I needed space to breathe, to think clearly. I knew I couldn't stay in that house anymore, not with her there pretending everything was fine. I felt like I was losing my mind, but I also knew I had to stay strong. I couldn't let her see me break. Not yet. As I sat in that hotel room staring at the wall, I realized how much I'd been. The woman I loved, the woman I thought I knew, she'd been hiding this huge secret, betraying me on every level. The money, the affair, the lies, it was all too much to process at once. But part of me was already deciding. I wasn't going to let her ruin me. I didn't know exactly what I'd do next, but I knew I had to start taking control. I had to figure out how to protect myself, my future, and maybe, just maybe, find a way to move on from this nightmare. I stayed in that hotel for a few days, trying to get my head straight. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw her face, those false smiles, the lies, the betrayal. I kept asking myself how I missed all the signs. Was I just blind, or did I refuse to see what was right in front of me? The more I thought about it, the more I realized I'd been naive. I had always believed in us, in her. But now I couldn't ignore the truth. She had been planning this for months. The money, the affair, the deception. It was all part of her master plan to escape, or maybe to get something out of me. I knew I had to act, but I also knew I couldn't do it alone. I reached out to a close friend, Mike, who had been through a divorce himself. I told him everything about the money, Lisa's cheating, the offshore accounts. He listened patiently, then told me I needed to get a grip and think about what I really wanted. "You've got to protect yourself first," he said. "You've got to be smart about this. Don't let her manipulate you into doing something you'll regret." That's when I decided I wasn't going to let her walk all over me anymore. Back at the house, I started to prepare my next moves. I contacted a forensic accountant to help me trace every dollar she'd stolen, every transfer, every offshore account. I wanted to build a case not just for the divorce, but to recover what I could. I also contacted a lawyer who specialized in financial crimes and divorce. I needed to know what my rights were and how to proceed legally. The lawyer told me I had a strong case, especially with the evidence I was gathering. I could sue her for fraud, seek reimbursement, and even press criminal charges if I wanted to. In the meantime, Lisa kept up her act. She called crying, begging me to come back, saying she was sorry, that she loved me and didn't mean to hurt me. But I wasn't falling for it. I knew her game. She was trying to guilt me into forgiving her, trying to make me doubt my instincts. But I saw through her. I knew she was still lying, still hiding parts of the truth. I told her I needed space, that I was working on things, and I refused to be manipulated any longer. I could see her frustration, her anger, her desperation. She was losing control, and I knew I was just getting started. I also started to think about what I'd do if we went through with the divorce. I had to protect my assets, my future, my sanity. I began moving some of my own money into accounts she didn't know about, just in case. I wanted to be prepared for whatever was coming next. I also started documenting all our conversations, all her lies, everything I could find. I knew she'd try to spin this, try to turn it around, but I had to be ready. One night, I found myself sitting alone in the hotel room, staring at my phone, feeling numb. I realized I'd been living in denial for too long. I had trusted her blindly, and she'd thrown it all away. The pain was sharp, but beneath it there was a strange sense of clarity. I knew I had to take control. I couldn't let her manipulate me anymore. I was done being the victim. I was going to fight for what was mine, my money, my dignity, my life. As I looked out the window at the city lights, I made a silent vow. This wasn't the end. It was just the beginning of a new chapter, one where I took back my power and made sure she paid for what she'd done. I didn't know exactly how I was going to do it yet, but I was determined. No more lies, no more betrayal. I was going to get through this one way or another, and I was done playing nice. The days that followed were a whirlwind. I came back home, not to a peaceful house, but to chaos. Lisa was furious when she saw I was serious about moving forward. She tried to guilt-trip me, crying and saying I was ruining everything, that I was overreacting. But I'd had enough of her lies. I knew the truth now, and I wasn't going to let her manipulate me anymore. I handed her some of the evidence I'd collected: screenshots, bank statements, recordings of her calls with Jake. Her face drained of color when she saw it all, and for the first time, I saw her real fear. I told her I was filing for divorce and pursuing legal action to recover the stolen money. Her protests were loud, angry, and full of lies. She insisted she was innocent, that she'd only done it because I was distant, that she was trying to save us. Yeah, right. That was laughable. I knew her game. She was trying to spin it so I'd feel guilty, but I'd had enough. I was done being played. The lawyer I hired moved quickly. We filed the paperwork and I started the process of recovering what I could from her accounts. It was complicated. She'd hidden the money well, but with the evidence I had, we could freeze her assets, seize the offshore accounts, and push her to pay back what she stole. Meanwhile, the divorce proceedings were. I knew I couldn't stay married to her, not after everything. The betrayal was too deep, and I refused to be her victim any longer. But Lisa wasn't just giving up quietly. She ramped up her manipulations, trying to turn my friends and family against me, claiming I was crazy and paranoid. She even hired her own lawyer to fight the divorce and the financial claims. I could see she was desperate, trying to cling to whatever she had left. That's when I realized she wasn't just a thief and a cheater. She was also a master manipulator. I had to stay one step ahead. One night she confronted me with a new lie, that she was pregnant with Jake's baby and that I was just a jealous, insecure husband who didn't understand her needs. I stared at her, stunned. I wanted to scream, to shake her, to tell her how disgusting I found her lies, but I kept my composure. I told her I didn't believe her and that I'd get a paternity test if needed. She looked panicked, realizing her lies weren't working anymore. I felt a strange mix of relief and anger. Relief because I finally had the truth, no more guessing, no more hiding. And anger because I'd been so blind, so trusting, and now I was left with this mess. I'd lost trust, I'd lost money, and I'd lost the woman I thought I knew. But I also knew I had to keep going. I had to see this through, to get justice, to protect myself, and to rebuild from the ruins she'd left behind. Looking back, I realize how much I changed during this ordeal. I became more cautious, more guarded. I learned that sometimes people you love can turn out to be the biggest liars and thieves. But I also learned that I was stronger than I thought. I had the power to fight back, to stand up for myself, and to walk away from a toxic situation. I don't know what the future holds, but I do know I won't let betrayal define me. I'll rebuild my life, one step at a time, and I'll never let someone manipulate or steal from me again. Now, I'm just waiting for everything to go through legally. The house is in the process of being divided. Her offshore accounts are being frozen, and I'm preparing for the final court date. It's been exhausting, but I feel a strange sense of relief, like I've finally taken control of my life again. I don't know if I'll ever fully trust anyone again, but I do know I'll never allow myself to be like this again. The pain is fresh, but so is my resolve. I'm ready to move on, to rebuild, and to finally put this nightmare behind me. Looking back now, I realize how much this whole ordeal changed me. I used to believe that love and trust were enough to keep a marriage together, but I've learned that sometimes people hide things so deep, they're almost unrecognizable. Lisa wasn't just a cheating wife. She was a con artist, a manipulator, someone who thought she could steal everything from me and walk away without consequences. But I fought back. I gathered the evidence, I filed the legal claims, and I made sure she paid for her betrayal. The final court hearing was a blur. Everything I'd uncovered was laid out clearly: her lies, her theft, her affair. She sat there trying to deny everything, but the evidence was irrefutable. When the judge finally ordered her to reimburse the stolen money and finalize the divorce, I felt a huge weight lift off my shoulders. It wasn't just about the money anymore. It was about reclaiming my dignity, my life, and my future. Since then, I've been rebuilding. It's not easy, trust is shattered, and I still wake up some mornings feeling angry or betrayed. But I've learned to protect myself better. I've started saving again, being more cautious with whom I trust, and I've even started therapy to work through the emotional scars. I don't think I'll ever fully forget what happened, but I'm determined not to let it define me. One thing I want to say to anyone reading this who might be going through something similar: trust your instincts. Don't ignore the small signs. If something feels off, dig deeper. And don't be afraid to ask for help, whether from friends, lawyers, or professionals. The truth might be painful, but facing it head-on is the only way to heal. I also want to remind people that betrayal doesn't have to be the end. You can come out of it stronger, more aware, and more resilient. It's a long journey, and there will be days when you feel like giving up. But hold on. Your life isn't over just because someone else decided to betray you. You have the power to rebuild, to start fresh, and to find happiness again. As for me, I'm learning to trust again slowly. I've realized that not everyone is out to hurt you, but you have to be smart about who you let into your life. I've also learned that money isn't everything. What matters most is integrity, honesty, and respect. Those are the things I'll hold on to as I move forward. So, if there's one thing I want everyone to take away from my story, it's this: never underestimate the strength you have inside. You might be, you might feel broken, but you're capable of fighting your way out of it, and in the end, you'll come out the other side, stronger and wiser than ever before.